Well, I am so honored today to have the legend, Darwin Hobbs, here on the Beyond Sunday podcast. Darwin, it's so great to meet you officially in
You
person,
too.
sort of in person,
Right.
but so excited to have a conversation with you today, man. How are you?
I'm just doing great. I'm honored to be here with you. I feel like I was sort of being left out of the party.
It's time. You have a seat at the table, my
Right.
friend.
Right. So I was left out. Now I'm at the party. I'm finally at the party. I feel like I'm included now.
Yeah, I love it. Um, Darwin, let's start with this. What's a day in the life of Darwin Hobbs like these days? What do you find yourself involved in?
Well, let's see. Nowadays, let's see. I later in life uh have a daughter who's 10. I'll be 57 this year, and my daughter's 10. So,
That's
you know, my,
amazing.
my wife Tracy and I, we were married for 20 years at that time, and we didn't think we could have kids. And so we just kind of we were just on the brink of maybe saying, maybe we'll adopt. But then, I just kept telling Tracy, like, no, I don't see anything wrong with adopting. I think there's so many kids that need homes, but I feel like we need to hold on to God's promise. We're going to have a baby. So, but she was like, look, I'll be 45 next year. So if we don't have a
Mm.
baby by then, cancel it, pull it. And so, so, um, but we held on to that promise, man. Let me tell you, Tracy got pregnant at 45 years old.
Unbelievable.
I mean, miraculous. Well, yeah, physically and miraculous. It was miraculous. I tell people all the time, look, you can't beat us. We had our own grandchild. And so it's it's she's a miracle, man. So we will celebrate soon 32 years married, and again,
Amazing.
we didn't think we would ever have kids, but here she is. Bethany's her name. So most of my days are spent adjusting to being this age and having a 10-year-old and navigating her world. Um,
Yep.
and the same with Tracy, who's my wife, again, who after 32 years, it feels like we've just been doing this for 2 days. I mean, but we've been best friends since fifth grade. Um,
Wow.
so, so that's, most days, Monday through Thursday and Friday, I'm kind of just, around and doing carpool and doing fifth grade math that I don't know how to do. So, yeah, I'm like
Yes.
that. I'm like the language arts guy, and then Tracy is the mathematician. So Bethany's in good hands on one or the other, but with math, dude, I don't even fractions like they give me anxiety.
I don't know how to do any of that stuff anymore. I have a seventh grader and I have a fifth grader as well. And it's like, I have no clue how to do it. Sorry, you're on your own. Ask your teacher. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and we stayed with Bethany. I'm like, hey, that's easy. You just carry the one and did it. She's like, no, we don't do it like that. And my teacher says not to do. I said, well, hey, well then you got to go get a help session with the teacher because I know how to do it like this. You
Yeah.
know, so
Right.
it's all different now. But and to me, there's nothing new under the sun. There's just different ways of at arriving to different roads that are open now that maybe weren't constructed when we were doing math. That'll
Right.
kind of preach one. That kind of that'll work on different topics. So different different ways to get different places that we didn't know about. But now, doesn't mean that the old way doesn't work. It just means that there's new roads you can take.
That's right. That's right. Um, Darwin, I want to talk about this because you've been involved in the music industry for a lot of years as an artist, as a worship leader.
Yes.
And I want you to talk to us about compare worship music from when you started in your career in music and worship. Then compare it what it was like then to what you see today.
Oh
What are the
wow.
similarities and the differences?
Well, let's see. So I started my journey. Well, I'm an artist, of course, now, but when I started as a background singer uh,
Okay.
in the 90s in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, but I moved from Cincinnati to Nashville in the 90s. And that's when I started working with a guy named Mike Card. Okay. So a lot of people don't know who that is, but they sing the song El Shaddai, El Shaddai. Mike wrote that song,
You
and
call him Mike, but his people probably
Michael
know him by
Card. Okay,
Michael Card.
no, that's my dude. That's my brother from another mother. He's. It feels frivolous to say, but that's my guy. That's my. I call him my rabbi. Okay, that's what I call him because
Amazing.
he's so off into God and the deep thing. I say, you're a rabbi. You're not like, I can't call you a teacher, but so that's my brother for real. So no, he took he took me on my first tour, my first whatever. I mean, I went to our first time out of the country was with Mike and a producer he had then called named Phil Nash. Um, man, so I started like that, singing with Mike Card. Okay, that's about as CCM and Celtic and high church as you can get. Okay, I went to
For
Ireland
sure.
and Scotland, and I mean, we're in churches. Talk about diversity. We're in churches full of people that don't look like me. I was the only black guy in that church, and I would Mike, just being who he is, would stand me up. He has a song called uh Emmanuel, our God is with us. And that's the song I would sing every night, man. And at first, it was kind of new for me just being in that environment, but I would sing that song and I'd be like, man, these people just staring at me like I'm crazy. But then after I get done, they would stand up and applaud, but it would seem like 10 minutes, So then that's when I started to learn about different expressions and different people's response, um,
Yeah.
to worship, okay, to what we call worship, but the music of worship, I should say. But that's how I started. And I sang with Michael W. Smith and CeCe Winans and BB. And man, I just worked with so many great artists there in Nashville, Jars of Clay and Clay
Yep.
Cross and Amy Grant, you name it. Like, I mean, I just worked with so many people as a background singer. And I was a session singer in Nashville. So I was a contractor. So I would hire people for sessions and do background sessions. I lived there for like 4.5 years. I think I did over 680 sessions, I think. Like, I mean, I was
Wow.
very busy. So that's how I started. But most of the work I did was in contemporary Christian music and pop and country. Um, I did it all. I was a very busy session singer in Nashville. So that's how I started. And but then when I became a recording artist, then I kind of uh, because of the producers, the style of the music, then I got kind of pushed over into black gospel. So that's where I started that. But to answer your question, worship music then, um, I think the similarities obviously are, contextually. I mean, it's about Jesus. Well, most of it. Let me just say this. No, I think back then, to me, the songs were just a tad bit more vertical.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now I would say if I had to make a comparison or draw a comparison, lots of what we hear and lots of the ideas that we convey in our songs seem to be a tad bit more horizontal. So because it would be just a tad bit more focused on our own personal journey and how we respond to God and our personal struggles, or sometimes I call it like sin conscious music, and at times even self degradating, which I don't believe is effective, and the best way for us to do what we do, or to it's not a necessarily effective way to communicate in a worship sense. But I think back then, if I got to just tell it like I want to tell it and say it like I want to say it, and it's my opinion, I think some of the worship back then was a tad bit more vertical.
Yeah.
In that there was more, I call it enthronement worship, where we just sang about God being holy, or we just sang about majesty,
That's right.
majesty, worship your majesty. And, and another person I worked with, Twyla Paris, just God bless her, but, I mean, just all those songs, I mean, oh Lamb of God. I mean, or He is exalted, the King is
Oh yeah.
exalted.
Classic. Come on.
I mean,
Taking me back.
no, absolutely. Okay, but just think about that. Okay, um, and juxtapose that with some of the songs that we have now, which are great songs, but a lot of them just again they're talking about us. And I just think that's one rank difference that I will point out. I think more enthronement back then.
Yeah.
Nowadays, kind of more horizontal and just songs that maybe deal with interpersonal uh, relationships, even if it's our interpersonal relationship with God, it still does more involve us than it did back then.
Yeah. Have we put ourselves at the center of worship today? Is that an issue
I
that
think
you
I
see?
think I think I think in some ways, I think in some ways we have put ourselves at the center. I think that we should, and this has to do a lot with songwriters. I think that again, people are so conscious about we're so conscious about ourselves and how we're navigating our faith walk, and that makes its way to our songs and the music of worship. And I'm not saying that's a wrong thing. I don't have a problem. Let's just say corporate worship. I don't have a problem with incorporating or including songs that would share our personal walk or personal experience. But I'm interested in where we're going to land with that, because
Mm.
I can start out that way, but then I need to ultimately land on the redemptive work of God in my own life. So I don't want to. I was in church one time and this worship leader was like, "Oh God," with like the room. He was leading worship, and we landed in a place where I thought, "Oh, this is a good place because where God is the focus, and he's enthroned here, and here we are." But then the worship leader began to communicate about his own sense of unworthiness, or, God, everything about me that's terrible. And I thought, and some people were
Talking too
fine.
much.
Huh?
He was talking too much, huh?
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. It was like getting to this place of just being so grateful to God for redemption having been accomplished, or God having paid this price. But then we show up at God's face with like the bill, or still saying, "This is what I owe," and he's like, "Oh, yo, I already paid for that. What are you doing?" It'd be like us being at a restaurant and somebody pays our bill and we're constantly at the cashier saying, "Let me pay this." It's like God's like, "Yo, I paid that." Like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
okay. Just worship, and just and again, just enthronement, man. Just getting back to the place where we cry holy and we worship his majesty. And I think a lot of times um it is because of just what we contend with in society and what we're dealing with in our own personal lives that's made its way. And again, not that that's wrong, but it has become preeminent in our expression. And I just think it's a disservice, because I think that for the most part, I think we need to just get back to just, you know, majesty and holiness and just enthronement.
Yeah. There's something so special about those moments
Oh my
when you take a
goodness.
simple song. The
Absolutely.
simplest of songs are sometimes the most powerful songs. I
No,
think we try to
absolutely.
overthink worship sometimes, but take
Absolutely.
a "He is exalted" or an "I exalt thee" and just let the moment kind of breathe. And you can watch God, watch the Holy Spirit just move on people.
That's
You can
right.
sort of get out of the way a little bit. It's
That's right.
like we've missed some of that, but I'm seeing it coming back a lot in a lot of spaces where
It's
we're writing more songs than we've ever written before,
mhm.
but we're sort of returning to the simplicity of worship, I feel like.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, a lot of what we're experiencing, I think, it's indicative of just where people live, David. Um, and just what because the music of worship is what I would say. You asked me before if I think that we've become the center. I just think the music and the art of worship has become more centered than really the
Mhm.
heart of it. Okay, so my organization is called Heart Art Worship. Okay, so and that just is
Yeah.
to mean that we perfect both the heart and the art of what we do as worship pastors and as creatives. And so I think we've been so focused in this last few seasons about the art of it all, because art is at a high. I mean, man, we got some gifted people out here,
Mm.
and creativity is at an all-time high. But I think in some ways we've sacrificed the heart of it all. And I think that if we're honest, and the music of and the genre of worship has become more preeminent than the heart of worship,
Yep.
which would mean to say just are relating to Jesus and walking with God. And I think it's indicative a lot of times of maybe a lack of connectivity, true connectivity. The definition I have for worshiper is someone who's intimately acquainted with God and has daily relationship with Him. Okay, exhibited by obedience to God. So, and if you notice, I didn't say anything about music.
That's right.
Didn't say anything about. There's no melody connected to that. There's no song. My wife Tracy is like the most committed, bona fide worshiper, but she's tone deaf. She doesn't sing.
Wow.
You know,
Love
so
that.
I mean, the music isn't a part of that exchange for her, but she's who I would classify as a very strong and committed worshiper because she loves Jesus. It's exhibited through her obedience. She's got a lot of integrity. And I mean, she's not perfect. I mean, but she's just an amazing example of a life that's submitted in a relationship to Jesus. And so I think that has taken more of a back seat, and we're so focused now on the music of worship that that has become kind of the center and the central focus for so many and in so many environments, because a lot of times we don't have a lot of teaching, and there's not a lot of expression over the pulpit or in our sermons, so to speak, about worship because we've made it so much about the music of it all. And so
Yeah.
and that's a disservice. It's not, we can't discount the music of worship. I think it's amazing. That's what I do. I mean, for the most part, but I think we gotta uh, kind of recalibrate and get our
Yeah.
focus uh, back where it really should be, which is vertical.
Yeah. I agree with you, Darwin. And it's just become, and I think this conversation kind of affects everybody. It affects pastors, it affects worship leaders, it affects
Absolutely.
musicians, but it also affects just the congregations, right? Worship has
Yes.
become so massive. And we've had
Right.
a lot of conversations on the podcast recently about the worship industry. And I know that's nothing new. The worship industry has existed for decades now. But I just think, and there's different arguments as to whether that's right or wrong or whatever. We don't have to get into that. But I just think it's become so big and such this massive thing that I think in sort of the shine, the shimmer and the shine of it all, we
Oh,
can
it's
lose the heart
huge.
of it.
I mean, the worship industry is huge. And let me just tell you, in a practical sense, it's great. I mean, because listen, put the gospel in any way, shape, form, or
Yeah, get it
fashion.
out there.
Get the gospel out there. Okay. So if you're going to use music, get it out there. Do whatever you got to do. But let me just tell you, keep the main thing the main thing. Okay. And keep the main focus, and the main person, just keep Jesus at the center. Who has that song? Is it Israel?
Yeah,
Jesus
Israel.
at the center of it all. So yeah,
Yeah,
got to keep. And then the other guy, Matt Redman, I'm coming back to the heart of worship where it's all about you. You
yeah,
know.
that's right.
So and we're sorry, Lord, for the thing we've made it, is the lyric he wrote for that song, And so what have we made it, David? You know, a lot of times we've made it just so much about the art of what we do, and we just haven't tended to maintain the level of focus. I think that some of the songwriters from back, like Twyla and Michael W. and different, maybe the focus was a little bit different from them. And I will say, in all fairness, in that dispensation of time, maybe they didn't have to contend with a lot of things that people are contending with now. We live in a different dispensation. There's lots of distractions, lots of pressures that didn't exist back then.
Yeah,
Michael W. and Twyla, when they were writing, "He is exalted," they didn't have the distraction of Instagram and trying to measure up and trying. So maybe that, so I'm not trying to discount that we live in a different time, but I just believe it's possible for us to maintain the main thing, and that is Jesus as the center, at the center, I should say. And
yeah,
so, and I think a lot of that comes with, again, embracing worship as worship and the music of worship as the music of worship. And I think that far too many times in our circles, worship is just so relegated to music that so many people don't engage in this idea of worship because they feel like you got to be a creative or you got to be holding a microphone. People come up to me after I minister a lot of times, "Oh, you're such a worshiper." I'll say, "Well, so are you, hopefully." You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
it doesn't matter. "Well, no, I don't sing." What does that have to do with it? Is what I ask people. And it challenges them. You know what I'm saying? And I tell
Yep.
them that definition. I'm saying, look, a worshiper just means that you got relationship with Jesus. You know what I'm saying? I happen to have the music of worship as a part of, the main thing for me. But listen, at the center of it, it's Jesus. So I think if we could get some songs and music that align with that, or more songs, I should say, that align with that, we'll be in a good space.
Yeah. Darwin, I want to talk a little bit about gospel music. I mean, you've spent a lot of time in that space, and part of what, and this is some conversations I'm having with some folks, and just what I'm seeing a lot of is a lot of worship music that just, it kind of sounds the same, and it's kind of taken over the world, right? And what was something, I help churches find staff. And so I
Mm,
was talking with an executive pastor and a particular candidate, and some of their feedback was, well, it's just a little too gospel, right? And that feedback kind of, it just hurt me a little bit, right?
mhm.
Because we've sort of almost held up this ideal in our churches, like we can't be too gospel, right? We can't stray too far from worship sounding a certain way. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff behind all that. But
Yeah,
where's where how do you think about this, sort of as someone who's spent a lot of time in gospel music, as a gospel music artist? Um, where is all the good gospel music? Is it out there and we're just not giving it a chance, or we're not finding it? Is it not being created as much as it once was? Can you talk to us
man.
about that tension?
Oh, David,
Did I open up a can of worms here?
what are you doing, David? Okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
no, listen. I'm gonna tell you, this
I
is a
just want to
hot,
have some real talk, Darwin. You
this
know what I'm
is a
saying?
hot topic. So listen, I feel that authenticity is key.
Mm.
Okay. I always say nowadays everything sounds like one big elongated album, like one big record. It's like because so much there's so that would speak to maybe a lack of creativity. Okay. So because everything to me sounds alike. No. Okay. And if I were a musician, I wish I don't play or anything like that. But I mean, if I were a musician, I could hear somebody say, "Oh, everything has the 3, the 5, and the 2 chord." I mean, it's like this
Yeah, very
template to me.
plain.
This a template of, and so you can almost. There's sometimes when I can get confused when somebody's playing uh, an intro to a certain song. I'm like, what is that? Is that is that this or is that that? Because everything sounds so much alike. Um, and I think that again, this genre of worship and that style has become sort of preeminent, and it's just a very popular thing to do, and to it's a popular style.
Yeah.
Praise and worship, um, CCM, contemporary Christian music. In my in a sense, if you're saying gospel, when you say gospel, if you mean to use, for the lack of a diplomatic way to say, black gospel or more urban sounding music, um, it's been a challenge for that to be, commonplace nowadays, because so much of what people do now and subscribe to is praise and worship, which would tend to lean more towards a contemporary Christian music sounding, even in black churches.
Right.
Um, and so even culturally, what this is my opinion, we seem to have, and this is because I think it's generational, that the current generation, or the current couple of past generations, they are more given to the contemporary Christian music style, and less of a maybe contemporary gospel, urban sounding expression. I feel like this, whatever is authentic for you to do and express in your music, then do that. This is the problem
Yeah.
I have though, when people are just subscribing to a trend and
Yes.
doing and having that expression just because it's trendy to do so. because then that's when we miss out, to me, and that's when we miss God, because I just believe God was intentional when he calls you to look the way you look and me to look the way I look, and this it's a kaleidoscope that I think sometimes we mess up because we're so busy trying to subscribe to and to align ourselves with this particular sound. If you're doing that because again, it's your authentic expression, go for it. But if you're
Right.
doing that, if you're embracing and erecting a sound so that it gets you played on a certain radio station or so that it gets you invited to a certain church or it gets you what you think is embraced by a certain community of people, then that's off, is what I'm going to say. Okay. And I
Yeah.
think that's less than folkish. And so I'm not saying everybody, you can't make a blanket statement, but for the most part, what I've seen is trend at the forefront. And I just think that's a disservice to the kaleidoscope. I think we need to have, diversity. I think we need to, it needs to, that quilt that I just think that it's suffering because so many people are
Yes.
just after this one style, at
Yeah.
CCC, at Contemporary Christian Cultural Center in New York. That's where I am the worship pastor, and I'm there. Israel Houghton is also there, and we have a good time, man, because Israel does what he does. I do what I do. It's diverse. And then we got some other leaders there so we got again, kaleidoscope, and it's multi as far as style. Okay.
Yeah.
But but at the end of the day, it's authentic to who we are, and I think that's why it works. Um,
Yeah.
Man, I feel like this, again, in this latest dispensation, we've had a lot of people who maybe weren't exposed to certain styles, and so authentically, that's all they know. And I think applause. Do what you do. But I gotta speak to the fact that there's a great number of people that have forsaken the creative expression that they really have that's most authentic to them and
Yes.
the people that they spend most of their time with, the genuine and the most authentic expression has been sacrificed because they feel like they have to acquiesce to the trend, and that to me is so disheartening, man. It breaks my heart. So
Yep.
it just because it's not necessary, and I just think we need to face that head on. There's this
Yeah.
other thing about people saying, well, why does it have to be about color? Or that, we should be colorblind. I don't like the word colorblind. I think we need to be color brave, David. I think we need to brave the waters of diversity and brave the waters of the fact that I look different than you look different than me. Our cultural expression may be extremely different. I'm not going to walk around saying I'm colorblind. That's stupid. I see that you look different than me. We need to be color brave and we need to face some of these cultural differences and figure out ways to marry them together and have them coexist because it can be both and it shouldn't be either or. And so many people are subscribing to an either or thing. Either it's this style of music or it's not pure. So I'm getting myself in trouble. I'll let you ask another question.
No, this is good, Darwin. Come on, man. You're preaching. Um, no, it's great. I just finished a book, it is controversial, but White Fragility.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I know that book.
it was amazing, right? And I know there's probably a lot of people that see that and won't even pick it up or, just don't want to face that. But for me, it
Mm,
was so eye-opening,
for
that whole
sure.
idea of color blindness and what that does to sort of, prop up those who have had a privileged, sort of grown into a culture of white privilege, and
No,
and we go ahead.
no. You finished, and I want to add something.
Yeah, I just think they're like she talks about that, like color blindness and individualism sort of being something that we hang our hat on as like, oh, well, I'm not racist, right? Or I'm not because my parents never were or I never were, but we are ignorant of the systems of privilege that we have grown up in.
No,
And to me, it
absolutely.
was so enlightening and eye opening and also heartbreaking for me to read a book like that and to say, how can I be better? How can I learn? And I don't think there's enough white people and white leaders who are asking those questions and pursuing that.
Well, let me just first say thank you for saying what you just said. and not just saying what you just said, because let me tell you what I'm a seer, and I can sense that what you're saying is coming from a genuine place. It's coming from a place of really wanting to be educated and be sensitive and be the best you can be and be available. Okay, so I love it. Um, I got so many friends, not so many. I got a few friends that are again, they're like siblings that don't look anything like me.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I'll give a shout out to my brother Banning Liebscher. Banning is the founder and pastor of Jesus Culture, but he's one of
Yep.
my best friends. Okay. And we do this thing, we call it wrestling, man. We get in there, we have the hard talks, and
Yep.
we get in there and we talk about whatever needs to be talked about, you know. And I feel that there's not enough of that happens. I Because of the community of people that I started in this business industry ministry with, you know, I was one of the few black guys that was running around. Like I said, whether it was with Michael Card or with a lot of these folks, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me back in the day. And
Yeah.
I had some amazing experiences, David, but there's some other times and other instances that weren't so amazing, and I experienced firsthand, bias, and I experienced, racism,
Yes.
in the midst of, you know, hallelujahs and thank you, Jesuses, and you're so amazing, but in the midst of all that, I experienced, you know, racism. It's not something I've spoken about a lot publicly, but I will just tell you, I mean, just it was a real thing for me. And I had to go through a lot of, you know, unlearning some stinking thinking that I had, and even some habits that I had of just kind of assimilating and feeling like I had to assimilate, uh I'm just gonna tell you, into whiteness. For me, that was just it. Just I'm like, yo, and I'm grateful for people like Banning and other friends I have that, like, no, you don't have to assimilate into. Be authentically yourself, and your
Yes.
beautiful black self, and you be your beautiful white self. But guess what? In the kingdom, we're all under Jesus, and again, that's not to say that we're blind though, because we just acknowledge where we came from and who we are, okay?
Yep.
And through the blood of Jesus, we're marrying that together, and we're living life together. We're doing life together. Multicultural, this word that we use a lot of times, most times that just means multiracial people. I go to a multicultural church. Do you? When's the last time you planted your feet under the table of one of you? I'm talking to a white person. When have you had a black person plant their feet under your table for dinner? Or a black
Mm,
person. Now, let's multicultural. When have you had some of your white brothers and sisters over your home, into your
come
space,
on.
and plant their feet under your table? Then you're telling me you're mixing the culture. Other than that, it's just multiracial. I go to church with some people that don't look like me, you know, and I shake their hand after church, and, hey, brother, and yada, yada, but I'm not mixing the culture.
Yep.
So I think we got to, we use these terms again frivolously, and because they're catchphrases, but a lot of times we're not living our lives in that way. And I just encourage you, me, everybody else to brave those waters. Again, brave, not blind, brave the
Yes.
waters of diversity. And because it's needed, and it's not an easy thing to do though, you know. Um, and again, I've experienced firsthand. I remember going to an event. I'm not going to say the people's names because everybody would know who I'm talking about. I remember going to this event in Memphis, Tennessee, man, and I remember standing and singing on that stage with my black self, and it was thousands of white people, and everybody on that stage is more popular than you and I put together right now.
Yeah.
And I remember they had me to come to do like the background vocals, and asked me to bring some of my singers. So I took me and two other young ladies. So it's scorching hot. The temperature was on, as we would say, on hell. That's what the temperature. If you look at the thermometer, that's what it said. Yeah. So, man, we had a break. So Now it's hot as fish grease outside. They put us in a tent, me and my two singers. We were in this tent with a cooler with some water, bottled water. Now, the other artists that we were there supporting and the organizers of this conference, they were in these trailers. You know, like if you go on a movie set and you got these trailers that people bring, because this was outside
Right.
in a park.
Air conditioning.
And this was just in like 2000 and 2001. So we were outside. They were all inside these trailers. They put us under a tent. I will never forget that. And it just speaks to the fact that there was a lack of sensitivity on somebody's part. And back then I wasn't quite as mature. So my response to that wasn't a mature response and it wasn't real graceful. So I just kind of vowed that I would never partner in that direction again. And I didn't. But it happened, you know. So and there's story after story I could tell you because but I and even after that, I can't lie. After that, I did partner a few times with some other people that didn't look like me. And a lot of that again was because I felt like I needed to assimilate. I felt like, yo, well, if I'm a black artist, then I gotta assimilate. I gotta do what it needs to be done so that I don't lose the good graces of people that don't look like me. I
Well,
gotta just dance to the rhythm of this drum because I want to be invited. Because my heart really is like, I don't want to just, relate to black people because I feel
yeah,
like I got to call a God on my life to sing to
100%.
everybody. So I gotta,
Amen.
I gotta dance to the rhythm of this drum and I gotta assimilate and I gotta, I gotta do what I need to do. Follow the rules, don't, be seen, not heard, but actually be heard because my voice is what people attach, they attach here, but they didn't attach right
Wow.
here. And so when people attach here, that's so temporary, man, because they don't really, you know, and
Yeah.
so that was hurtful, dude. And it's been hurtful to experience that in several arenas. Um, but God's gracious. And, I've had, I pursued healing in a lot of different ways. Um, and let me just say it's an ongoing process for me because, especially with the climate of our country today, and all of
Yeah.
what we're experiencing, even in the political discourse, it's hard. I think about it, a lot, and it takes, and again, great deal of intention. I called Banning or text him the other week. I just text him like, I'm texting you to say, I love you. I got to tell you, I love you.
Yeah.
You know, I got to say it.
Yeah. Darwin, there's just so much to unpack there. And I thank you for just being courageous and sharing that because I know that's not easy to talk about, especially with a stranger that you've never met on a podcast that you've
No,
never
but I
been on
mean,
before. But
there's comfort, there's safety here. I could tell, it's
yeah.
all good. I mean, but it is what it is, as the common
Yeah.
vernacular, it
And
is what it is.
I'd imagine that is the experience even today of many black artists in the Christian music industry. Is that accurate to assume that?
I think that that may be their experience. I don't know that it's acknowledged. I think that a lot of people feel that, in order to remain in the good graces or remain in the community of diversity, then people feel that they probably kind of, you know, dial it back, dial
Yep.
back their personality, dial back their opinions, dial back their voice, not the singing voice. Yeah, the voice, because they don't want to lose the maybe a seat at some table.
Yep.
You know, my thing is
Everybody
this.
loves the singing voice.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But man, when you weigh in, if you got a voice, like I got an opinion, and like I want to weigh in, I want to be, I want to be, in certain environments, man. I'm like, come on, it's not diverse if you're embraced with your art, your singing, or you can host, or you can cook, or you can usher, or you can do whatever, or be an adjutant or whatever. But no, I feel that if we're really being diverse, then we gotta be represented at the table. Like, what about the decision-making table? Like, what,
You're right.
and so, and let me just say, if you're in your environment, if there's no diversity to be at that table, I get it. Because I mean, the churches it could be 90s. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably 95% Black. I know. So there may not even be an opportunity to have diversity at the table. We do have
Yeah.
diversity at our table, but in some settings, let's face it, it's just there's not that. Okay, and I get
Yeah.
it. But I'm saying where there are, but Tracy and I, we went to a church here. Well, never mind. But we at one point were fellowshipping with a church that I would say on every row there was a kaleidoscope. There were Blacks, Hispanics, and whites on every row of the church.
Yep.
But that was not represented at the table. Okay. So it was represented in the creative arts, and it was represented in the host team, and it was represented in the parking lot team, but
Not
not
the
at the
executive pastor.
no, not at the decision making table. I just think that I take issue with that because I feel like
Yeah.
there has why
Yeah.
and maybe some people don't, but I do, and so for us that environment was not healthy, and so then no longer did we continue. But I mean, I think it's important. I think how can we not? It's just important if we're going to say we're pursuing God wholeheartedly, then we got to embrace everybody He embraces. And
Yep.
it's hard for me, and it's a hard discussion for people to have. Um, but here we are, David, having the discussion. But
We're having it.
it's all
We're having
good.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I interviewed Nikki Lerner recently, and she's a culture coach and does a lot of this work with organizations and churches. And what she says is a lot of churches want to be multicultural. They say they want to be multicultural, but actually what they are is multicolored. You're not multicultural until you share power, right?
Listen,
Until
a-
you allow people into positions of influence. That's when you become multicultural.
that's right. And well, God bless her. It's kind of just what I just said though. Like I say
Yeah.
multiracial, which is multicolor, and and I'm not sure why that is. Okay, there's a lot of people would argue the fact that, white people won't come and frequent and follow a Black leader, but in a lot of churches that have a white leader, then a lot of Blacks will submit to that level of leadership or that leadership from that, demographic of race or whatever. Um, I don't know what that's about, but we can't lie that it's more common for Black people to follow a white leader as opposed to lots of white people to go follow a Black pastor. Um, I don't know what that's about, but that's a reality in a lot of places. And to me, it just says that we got a lot of work to do, a lot of
Yeah.
heart work to do. Okay.
Yep.
And there's a lot of practical work that needs to be done. And some things are so practical, David, and I think we're so busy trying to complicate things. Sometimes it's just practicality. Sometimes you just need to take a coffee. Just take coffee. And if you lived here, I'm trying to have coffee with you. I mean, you got to build relationship. You got to be intentional and real focused about trying to build community and relationship with people, and my thing is for years, I thought I had relationship built with some of these people. Some of the people I might have named earlier, but the relationship, they were more attached here with
Wow.
Darwin, with what I was bringing to the table here with this. But right here, man, please, there was zero connection. And there were certain instances and times on the timeline that let me know it was a defining moment that it's all about this. There was no, and so that can be hurtful because, to come to the realization that, it's strictly transactional and it's not really relational, and I've
Mhm.
been approaching it out of transaction, yes, because I'm hired and I'm doing a job, but then I'm like, yo, this is my brother, this is my sister, and but whenever this is not at play, man, Mm-mm. And so we got work to do.
Oh, there's so much work to do, and the challenge is just getting folks to realize that there's even a problem, right? Because I feel like, and I didn't really even plan on talking about this, Darwin, but I'm
All
glad that
good.
we are. But we've sort of relegated racism today as only outright acts of hostility, right? But it goes so much deeper than that, to the systems and the structures that we're just in, right? It's just part of our culture. It's in the
Absolutely.
fabric of our culture, right?
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
it's not just sort of the things we see on the news of white supremacist rallies and all this kind of stuff. It is that,
Yeah.
but it's also the entire system.
No, and even as we speak about worship and music, I mean,
Yeah.
just and if this isn't how you think or feel, then as the common colloquialism says, if the shoe fits, wear it. Don't put this on yourself. Don't think I'm talking to you if this isn't you. But so many people, even as we talk about style, and so many people relegate, or they feel that a more contemporary Christian music sound is more pure than a black gospel sound, or it's and so
Wow.
and so in a sense, for a lot of people, that is based in and stems from, as we would say, I don't know, white is right, or we feel like, well, if it's simple chords and it's not complex, then that's more pure. That's the pure worship. And then over here, if it's a little bit more complex and then that would be considered maybe more in the soulish realm of things. Well, that's hogwash, okay. And so and I tell people all the time, again, I go back to that word authenticity, like it just be have an authentic expression, okay? And if the authentic expression is the 3, the 5, and the 2 chord only for you, then do that and do it well. But
Right.
don't tell me because I'm over here with some complex suspended chords and just because I don't say, because we would say nowadays in this dispensation, that oh Lamb of God is pure, but then this would be like, oh, Lamb of God, sweet Lamb of God. Okay, well, we think that's not pure. That's in the arm of the flesh, and that's what is that? That doesn't make any sense.
Wow.
But we feel that you know, He is exalted, the King is exalted on high. I will praise Him. That's pure. But He is exalted, the King is exalted on high. Was that no? Is that no more pure? So
I could just have you sing this whole podcast, Darwin. Keep going, man.
no, but I'm telling you, that sounds petty, but that's how a lot of people feel nowadays. They feel like if it's not the first option I gave, then it's now. Let me clear something up. I do believe we got to be good stewards of our gifts, David. I think that I think some of that we got to dial some of that back because some of that it brings too much art into the exchange. I'm talking about corporately, and to me,
Yeah.
it can be distracting. Okay,
Yeah.
so we
I
got
hear
to
what you're
be.
saying.
Jack Hayford taught me you got to steward your gift and know when to pull some of that out, know when to dial some of it back. Because some people,
Yeah.
they so gifted, woo, they're so gifted that I'm like paying more attention to the I'm paying more attention to that than I am anything about God being exalted. Because I'm a creative. So I'm like, what did she just do? That was killer. So
Right.
we do have to be mindful and be good stewards of our gift, okay? And know when to execute certain tricks and certain in the natural, certain expressions and certain things we know to do. You got to steward that thing, okay? Especially if you're a worship leader and you got a whole corporate body of people that you're leading into this corporate experience and corporate advance. Then sometimes our gifting, our level of gifting, because we got some highly gifted people.
Yeah.
Sometimes we got to teach people to steward those gifts and know when to and when not to. Okay, so I'm
Yes.
not I'm not just saying yeah, I just want to give some
But
balance to
that
what.
doesn't mean that you can't express yourself that way. And
No,
we as white people can't use words like pure, or not pure. Like that's just completely
yeah. I
wrong.
mean, you because I think that well, and who's to say to whom it's pure, it's pure. I mean, so who? I heard one artist say one time, well, what I do is it's pure, and I think that maybe some people just don't like because it's I what I do is it's pure. Okay, well, that doesn't mean that what somebody else does is not. It just
Right.
so I think it's ridiculous um to relate purity or to classify something as pure because it's creatively simple,
Simple.
and sometimes
Yeah.
people, I could make an argument that people would opt for the pure or simple route because they don't have the skill set to do. Ah, you know what
I
I'm
can't do I can't do that.
saying?
I
But
wish I could.
so sometimes, because I will say this now, in Black gospel, man, some of these people, they can, woo, they can sing and they got a high level of skill. So a lot of that is not attainable. I don't know how to, I can't do some of that stuff. And so so I think maybe this more simplistic expression creatively is more accessible to people because it doesn't require as much skill. I get it. And so that to me is part of why it's so popular because it doesn't require a lot from people skill wise. It's very simple, it's easy to do. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the more complex and advanced level of singers need to be classified as not anointed or not, first of all, that's the other thing, David, this whole anointed thing. It's like, first of all, I think we need to move beyond just saying people are anointed. My thing is, let's have us start to operate with authority with what we do and not just some anointing, so I
Yeah.
think that's
Right.
what separates the men from the boys here. When I can sense that there's a kingdom authority on what people are on that expression, I'm all in. It's like
Yeah.
nowadays almost like anointing can be mimicked. It's like that can be imitated.
Ooh,
People call you anointed if you say the right words or if you do the right thing but I'm like, when there's authority present,
that's
and when there's
different.
somebody who really knows their way around presence, I can tell when we're gonna land. Sometimes I feel like in some settings, I'm like, it's just good. Like that guy I told you that church service I was in when we got to this point, and I felt like, here we are. This is a good space for everybody corporately because God, you're at the center and we're focused on you. But then the worship leader began to say things that put us horizontal again. It's made me start thinking about the fact that everything wrong I did or everything wrong about me. Okay, so and then that put us in a circling pattern to me. It was like, here we are, we're going to land at presence, but then we didn't land because we just start circling around the outer court because we start talking about our problems, how bad we are, all of our sin.
Yeah.
It's like God covered us in the blood and we took the sheet of covering off. Like, nope, God, you covered it, but we want to talk about it right here, right now, in the midst of corporate worship. It's not good.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, and I want there to be a day, Darwin, and maybe it's coming where more more styles and sounds are commercially viable, right?
Mhm.
Where it's not we've just I was interviewing Malcolm Duplessis recently and he's what he said was we've reduced everything down to this small expression of what's commercially viable and all the churches are doing it, right? From the black churches to the white. I mean, it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
But and I think even some of our listeners right now that feel maybe relegated to the sidelines because their gift hasn't been celebrated, where they've had to adapt their voice to fit in with a certain crowd. I just want you to feel freedom today that God created you to be who you are, that you don't have to change who you are, that you are who you
Absolutely.
are, and God has a specific reason He made you that way, that you look that way,
Absolutely.
that you sound that way. And we haven't always celebrated that, but my prayer is that we will learn how to celebrate that, you know?
Amen, David. That is so good. I mean, just And whoever's listening to this, I hope that you heard what he said, because again, I think it's a cheap shot, and it's a disservice to Jesus, just the level of creativity and diversity that God has. Man, he has put some amazing talents and gifts and abilities and expressions in so many different people. And so, but for us to just discount that and to limit that, and just
Yeah.
all of a sudden, in certain dispensation of time in a year, I don't know what year it was, but it was a certain time where everything just started, everything came to this, and just this is the expression, and this is what's acceptable, and this is what's going to be played on radio, and this is what's going, in the music sense, and this is, and I'm like, man, what happened? And I just think that, just thank you for saying what you said, because see, somebody needs to be encouraged in that
Yeah.
light, that to just embrace and develop and walk in fully who God has called you to be, and the expression that He's given to you. I fought this for years, because I thought, because I haven't recorded an album in over 15 years. And so for a lot of there's a lot of reasons why not, but in a lot of ways, I kept thinking, man, I just can't dance to the rhythm of that drum, because that ain't me.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yep.
sing whatever I got to sing. And there's songs out here now that fit that vein, where it's just in that vein. But I sing them, but I sing them the way Darwin sings it. Okay.
Right.
Because that's all I know to do. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm be 57 years old. I'm going to record an album in April, and here in Atlanta, live, by the way, shout out. But but um but it's important for me to release the sound that God's put in me to release, and I
Yeah.
and there's nobody else that could do that but me. So shame on me to continue to kind of like, tuck my light, because I feel like maybe what my expression is doesn't fit, you know. But guess what? It's gonna have to fit. I mean, what's the one song I love singing? That song, Christ is my firm foundation. It's
Yeah.
the rock on which I stand. Well, that's how I sing it. I don't know. I can't sing it like, what's the guy? What's his name? Is
Cody
it Cody
Carnes.
Carnes? Or who?
Cody
Yeah.
Carnes.
I
Yeah.
can't sing it like Cody, but guess what? I'm showing up fully Darwin, and because that song it's got the power of God on it. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's my point. It's like, shame on me if I try to, replicate Cody, or he tries to sing my song, he's able, if he ever tries to sing that and tries to sound like me, or do it like Darwin would do. No, the message of
Yeah.
the song is God is able to do just what he said he would do, exceedingly abundantly, far above all we can ask or think. And so
Yep.
that's the message. Now the messenger, have at it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, dude. I could talk about this all day long.
Oh, do I love it? Well, I want you to talk about this live recording that you're doing. So this
Oh
is
my
this is
goodness.
a couple months away, at least at the
Yeah.
time of this recording. So first off, so talk a little bit about why you haven't released an album in 10 years, and then tell us
It's
about,
been 15 years.
oh, 15 years. Wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
why that delay, and then talk to us about what you're planning in April.
Well, several reasons. One, I talked about Bethany earlier, but she wasn't here 15 years ago. But I took a hiatus after that last album. It was the Champion album, which, it's funny because it was successful. I mean, it's the only Stellar Awards are the awards in Black Gospel that you win it's like the Dove Awards in the Grammys, and then there's Stellar Awards over here. So
Yep.
that's the only album I've ever won a Stellar Award for, for Praise and Worship Album of the Year, Champion. So it was a great album. After that, though, I just kind of went on this hiatus because I was seeking God about what it is I was supposed to do during the next few years of my life. Okay, so even in the midst of all that, then here comes Bethany. So I just ended up really longer than I was supposed to, though, ended up just on this humongous long hiatus. Part of the time, because this expression of everything's moving towards this a more CCM sound, and I thought that ain't what I do. So then I don't have there's no need in me releasing music, because it's not going to be embraced by the masses. Nobody's going to, so I just kind of took
Wow.
a backseat because of that. as well. And then I started, the enemy was fighting me about my age and aging, and like, I'm getting too old. I don't want, so that was the negative stuff. But the positive thing is I was really focused and began to really focus in the latter part of this hiatus just on what God wanted me to do in the local church setting, and just the call on my life to be a creative pastor and to pastor creatives and train and develop singers in a local church setting. And so now, I that's more of what I'm supposed to do than anything else. Okay. So,
Love
but
that.
then I thought, well, even when I go to churches and try to help train and develop people and creatives, I need a soundtrack that come along with me, because if I go to a church this weekend and do what I call a hard art intensive, where I go and train, develop singers and spend time with them and then stay for Sunday and lead worship, you know, the soundtrack that I have, I'm gonna have to sing Israel music. I'm gonna have to go with Elevation. I'm going with all these other people because I don't have the soundtrack, in my opinion, that really
Right.
fits that level of training. So I said I got to record a soundtrack to come alongside the work I'm doing. Really, a
Yeah.
resource for what I'm doing, the work I'm called to do in local churches. So that's what I'm recording in April 4th. It's the first time I've recorded as an independent artist, because I've always been a label artist and had labels to do it all and pay for it all. So this is the first, that's a
Right.
faith walk for Tracy and I. So
Wow.
Hard Art Worship, that's our little company. And so it's the first time I'm recording an album independently. So it's called Setlist. And so here's the idea: Setlist Volume 1. And so I'm going to do 5 volumes of these. Okay. So I want to record 5 set lists that I give as a resource to worship leaders like me. One of the most arduous tasks that I have as a worship leader is picking songs, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of music out here, but not a lot of it to me that will work corporately, because some of it is just so wordy, man. I'm like, this is a dissertation. What are you talking? It's like you, and so so man, and so then that presents like the learning curve for people, and if for corporate worship, I'm like,
Yeah.
you people can't sing this stuff because they're too busy looking at the screen trying to, wait a minute, what? God is the absolute, regenerative foundation of my
It's like, what is
whatever.
going on right now?
Yeah. So, so because it's so wordy, so I'm like, it's hard to find songs that really work for the core, because I'm all again for the corporate advance. Okay, maybe if it's a concert and you're somewhere a solo artist and you're doing I get it. But for corporate worship, we need some good songs that work, some call and response, some things that are really simple. You asked me earlier about back then. The songs they were more simplified as far as the lyrical content, and so nowadays, it's like people they take every thought they have about God and themselves and they load it into one song. And so then you got 6 verses and 2 tags that people got to learn, and all in the course of 15 minutes. And so by
That's
the
right.
time the song is over, they still don't know it. And then us as worship leaders, which I'll just throw this in here for free, we are so busy trying to keep up with the top 40 that then we're releasing and introducing too many songs too often. Okay, so man,
Yeah.
if I introduce a new song, I'm gonna do that song and put that in rotation for the next 6 weeks. Sometimes we feel like, well, we're not being productive, but we repeat something. But you gotta repeat it, get it into the fiber of the house. Do that song again and again, so then by the time you do it again in a couple of months, then people are not, the learning curve is gone because they know it, because they've gotten familiar. But we are so busy trying to introduce new songs every week. And then we wonder why corporately people are in the screen. They're reading. They can't really engage, outside of the learning curve is there. I got to learn this music. I got to read the words. Then maybe when it gets to the chorus, they might come off of the screen and engage some. But then when you go back to the chorus, I'm right back at the screen reading.
Right.
So Setlist, the album I'm going to record in April, and I'm going to do 5 volumes of these. They're going to be loaded with songs that hopefully have very little bit of a learning curve that people can learn within 2 minutes of hearing it.
Love that.
And then you get this wall of sound that I think is a lot of times missing nowadays. You can have a wall of sound after people get to know the song, but
Yeah.
nowadays, a lot of times you don't hear that big wall of sound because,
Mhm.
again, people are just not as familiar with the music. So Setlist is what I'm recording.
Are
Volume
these
1.
like Are these some of these original songs, or are they
Yeah,
cover songs?
yeah, and I put a call out for my friends that are songwriters to submit songs. I got over 200 songs in 24 hours, and I
Wow.
got so much music to listen to. Some of it's good, but some of it, again, I gave some strict criteria. I'm like, look, this
Yeah.
needs to be corporate friendly. It needs to be extremely accessible. I need my wife Tracy, who again doesn't really sing. I need her to stand in the congregation and sing like she's Natalie Grant or sing
She
like she's
knows. She knows when it's a good song.
and let me tell you, the songs that I've already chosen, I can tell because Bethany, my daughter, and Tracy, they'll be walking around, you know, they'll just be walking around here and singing the songs, um, and that lets me know that's good because it's catchy. They got it, and they're not necessarily real musical. So, but and so that's what I'm going to record, dude. And hopefully other worship leaders like myself, they will take these set lists that we're giving them and they'll incorporate them into the body. And then when I go do some of the work that I want to do at local churches for training and developing, then I have that music as a soundtrack to use. So I'm excited about it. It's been a long
Yeah.
time. I'm excited about the producers, a young man named Jaden Baker, who is in Dallas. A lot of people know his grandmother. She's Cheryl Brady. She's a pastor, and his dad is Chris Baker. But Jaden is 20, and I'm 57 here. So the marriage
Wow.
of the generations is what I'm excited about.
Come
And
on.
I've known him since he was 4 years old. But he's very well versed. So he gets it. He's like, yo, Uncle Darwin, I still listen to your music. And he's the MD for Torrin Wells. So he's
Yeah.
he's he's somebody that I'm so excited about because he's gonna help to train my ears and put my ears to the ground so that I'm relevant and I'm releasing a sound that is current. And I think that he's open to, learn some and get some excerpts from where I've been and the experience I have,
Yes.
and that's where that both and comes together. So generationally, it's a marriage. I can't wait for it. And man, it's going to be great. Set list, man, volume 1. Here we
Love
go.
it. What a great idea. This kind of combination of artistry, but yet a resource for worship leaders.
Absolutely.
Love the heart behind that. As long, Darwin, as long as it's distinctly Darwin, like we talked about in this interview, that you're
Oh
not
yeah.
trying to be somebody you're not.
Now stylistically, there's it fits me stylistically because guess what? See, people always say they're like, "Oh, are you against like contemporary Christian? Are you crazy?" That's how I start. That's where I start. But not
Yeah.
just start. I didn't just start as a background singer in CCM. I grew up in a church in Cincinnati, Ohio, where the pastor's wife, who was our worship pastor, she was very well versed. So we would sing Don Moen music. We would sing Larnell Harris. We would sing Thompson Community Singers. We would sing Ricky Dillard and New G. We had it was a smorgasbord of just everything. So
Yeah.
that's how I grew up. Ron
Yeah.
Canoli and Fred Hammond, and so no, I did it all. So that's it. So my album, it'll be stylistically, yeah, because we got some songs I think that would lend themselves to stylistically to a more CCM style that
Yeah.
would be accessible, and then there's some stuff that definitely would be considered Black gospel style, and we're gonna do all of it with our authentic selves, and it's gonna
Yep.
be authentically me. Um, and I'm excited about it, man.
Love it so much, Darwin. Love what you're doing. Hey, thank you for spending some time with us today, for
Thank
sharing
you.
your heart, talking about some hard things, but really, really good. I think it's important for us to talk about these issues and these topics. And I just appreciate you, Darwin, and your heart.
Thank
And
you for having
let's
me
do this
here.
again sometime.
I was gonna tell you if we don't, then that's gonna make me think I said something wrong to you and to your
No, man,
folks.
it's great.
I don't believe in accidents or coincidence in God. I think that this was an appointed time to talk and to share. Um, so thank you for having me, and thank you for your level of boldness and transparency and just openness because that's not too readily found. And so thank you, David.
Yeah, absolutely.